So we all saw that President Trump signed a bunch of executive orders, but they didn't really discuss them as he was signing them. So here are the orders that he has signed thus far. Number 1, restoring names that honor American greatness. To start, he talks about the appointments to the U.S. Board on Geographic Names within 7 days of the day of this order. Each agency head with authority to appoint members to the Board on Geographic Names pursuant to, this is a federal statute, 43 U.S. Code 364A, shall review their respective appointees and consider replacing those appointees in accordance with applicable law. Secretary of Interior shall review and consider additional appointments to the Board to assist in fulfilling all aspects of this order, subject to all applicable laws. So basically, it is the renaming of Mount McKinley, and he goes into the history of President William McKinley, the 25th President of the United States, heroically led our nation to victory in the Spanish-American War. Under his leadership, the United States enjoyed rapid economic growth and prosperity, including expansion of territory gains for the nation. McKinley championed tariffs to protect U.S. manufacturing, boost domestic production, and drive the U.S. industrialization and global reach to the new heights. He was tragically assassinated in an attack on our nation's values and our success, and he should be honored for his steadfast commitment to American greatness. In 1917, the country officially honored President McKinley through the naming of North America's highest peak, yet after nearly a century, President Obama's administration in 2015 stripped the McKinley name from federal nomenclature, an affront to the President McKinley's life, his achievements, and his sacrifice. Interesting that he didn't do this the last time he was in office. But anyways, within 30 days of the date of this order, the Secretary of the Interior shall, consistent with 43 U.S.C. 364 through 364F, reinstate the name Mount McKinley. The Secretary of the Interior shall work with Alaska Natives, entity, and state and local organizations to adopt names or landmarks to honor the history and culture of the Alaskan people. That's nice. Section 4, Gulf of America. And see, when they announced this, I don't even think they mentioned the Alaskan people, but I think that's important. Of course, naming the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America. Has long been an integral asset to our once burgeoning nation, has remained an indelible part of America. The Gulf was a crucial artery for America's early trade and global commerce. Largest Gulf in the world, and the U.S. coastline along the remarkable body of water spans over 1,700 miles, contains nearly 160 million acres. Providing roughly 14% of our nation's crude oil production and abundance of natural gas, consistently driving new and innovative technologies, and have allowed us to tap into some of the deepest and richest oil reservoirs in the world. It's home to vibrant American fisheries, teeming with snapper, shrimp, grouper, stone crab, and other species, recognized one of the most productive fisheries in the world. Okay, so. And then something to note at the very bottom. Doesn't have his name on it, just the White House. This order, do note this, is not intended to and does not create any right or benefit, substantive or procedural, enforceable law, or inequity by any party against the United States, its department, and agencies or entities, its officers, employees, or agents, or any other person. Here's a big one. Designating cartels and other organizations as foreign terrorist organizations and specially designated global terrorists. Which, why hadn't they done this? Why haven't they done this? You know what I'm saying? They've got other groups listed as terrorists. Even some, our own American citizens, if they consider them extremists, are listed as domestic terrorists. But, anywho's, here we go. Designating cartels, and note that it's all caps, and other organizations as foreign terrorist organizations, especially designated global terrorists. By the authority vested in me as President by the Constitution and laws of the United States of America, including the Immigration and Nationality Act, process with certain international cartels and other organizations will be designated. It doesn't say who the other organizations are, but I guess they can just make those up as they go along. Will be designated as foreign terrorist organizations consistent with 219 of the INA, 8 U.S. Code 1189, or specially designated global terrorists consistent with IEEPA 50 U.S. Code 1702, and Executive Order 13/2024 of September 23, 2001, blocking property prohibiting transactions with persons who commit, threaten to commit, or support terrorism as amended. So whoever they so choose are considered terrorists. They can block their property, not even allow them to buy stuff. Or anybody who threatens to commit or supports terrorism. International cartels constitute a national security threat beyond that posed by traditional organized crime, with activities encompassing, these are the activities, converging between themselves in a range of extra-hemispheric actors, from designated foreign terror organizations to antagonistic foreign governments. Complex adaptive system characteristics of entities engaged in insurgency and asymmetric warfare and infiltrating into foreign governments across the Western Hemisphere. Cartels have engaged in campaign of violence and terror through the Western Hemisphere that has not only destabilized countries with significant importance for our national interests, but also flooded the United States with deadly drugs, violent criminals, and vicious gangs. They functionally control through a campaign of assassination, terror, rape, and brute force nearly all illegal traffic across the southern border of the U.S. and certain portions of Mexico. They function as quasi-government entities, controlling nearly all aspects of society. The cartel's activities threaten the safety of the American people, the security of the United States, and the stability of the international order in the Western Hemisphere. Their activities, proximity to, and incursions in the physical territory of the United States pose an unacceptable national security risk to the United States. Other transnational organizations, such as Tren de Aragua, La Mara Salvatrucha, pose similar threats to the United States. Their campaigns of violence and terror in the United States and internationally are extraordinarily violent, vicious, similarly threaten the stability of the international order in the Western Hemisphere. Within 14 days, the Secretary of State shall take appropriate action in consultation with Secretary of Treasury, Attorney General, Secretary of Homeland Security, Department of National Intelligence to make recommendation regarding the designation of any cartel or other organization described in Section 1 of this order as foreign terrorist organization, consistent with 8 U.S.C. 1189. And then, nothing in this order shall be construed to impair or otherwise affect authority granted by law to an executive department or agency or the head thereof. Only Congress can pass such laws, basically. But, anyways, this order is not intended to, does not create any right or benefit, substantive or procedural enforcement of law and equity. Let's go on to the next one. Reforming the federal hiring process and restoring merit to government service. American citizens deserve excellent, efficient federal workforce that attracts the highest caliber of civil servants committing to achieving freedom, prosperity, democratic rule that our Constitution promotes. But current federal hiring practices are broken, insular, and outdated. They no longer focus on merit, practical skill, and dedication to our Constitution. Federal hiring should not be based on impermissible factors such as one's commitment to illegal racial discrimination under the guise of equity, or one's commitment to the invented concept of gender identity over sex. Inserting such factors into the hiring process subverts the will of people, puts critical government functions at risk, and risks losing the best qualified candidates. By making our recruitment and hiring process more efficient, focus on serving the nation, we will ensure the federal workforce is prepared to help achieve American greatness and attracts the talent necessary to serve our citizens effectively. Within 120 days of the date of this order, the Assistant to the President for Domestic Policy consultation with the Director of the Office of Management and Budget, the Director of the Office of Personnel Management and Administrator of the Department of Government Efficiency shall, here we go, basically trying to make DOGE a government entity, which that was within minutes, they have filed lawsuits over that, so the Supreme Court should hopefully say what they can and cannot do. Since they did bypass Congress in making DOGE, you can only apply anything as an agency. Anyways, there's a whole article on that whole thing right there, so I'll try to find that link and attach it with the links in this particular description of this video, so you can, if you're interested, read over that. The consultation with the Director of the Office of Management Budget, the Director of Office of Personnel Management, and the Administrator of the Department of Government Efficiency. There's no such thing as any kind of agency that the President has any power to create. Only Congress can do that. So anyways, there's a whole thing about that. Federal hiring plans shall prioritize recruitment of individuals committing to improving efficiency of federal government, passionate about the deals of our American Republic, preventing the hiring of individuals based on their race, sex, or religion, and prevent the hiring of individuals who are unwilling to defend the Constitution or to faithfully serve the executive branch. Technology, leadership, federal hiring plans shall include specific agency plans to improve the allocation of senior executive service positions in the cabinet agencies. The hiring plan shall include specific agency plans to improve the allocation of senior executive service positions in the cabinet agencies. Only Congress, the legislators, can regulate and create laws about hiring practices. But anyways, all this will be argued in federal court. So there's that one. Once again, not signed by him, but the White House. Ending radical and wasteful government DEI programs and referring. Again, he has no power to end any agency. Only the legislators can do that. So that also will be challenged in federal court. Purpose and policy. The Biden administration forced illegal and immoral discrimination programs going by the name diversity, equity, and inclusion into virtually all aspects of the federal government in areas ranging from airline safety to the military. I think some of this stuff that Biden done has been argued in federal court, but really and truly, it's the legislators' job to take things to the United States Supreme Court if they don't like what the legislators do or what a president does. If they think that a president has done something that is outside his authority, they are to take it to federal court. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't, and that's the problem. We must give a full accountability of our legislators equally with our president, because the way our government is set up, it is not the president who has the power, but we are a balance, checks of balances type of government. We have legislator, executive, and judicial, and they all have equal powers amongst each other. Therefore, we cannot give all the power to the president. The legislators have their duty, the president has his, and the courts have theirs. Anywho's, here we go. Nearly every federal agency entity submitted equity action plans to detail the way that they have featured DEI's infiltration of the federal government. The public release of these plans demonstrated immense public waste and shameful discrimination that ends today. Americans deserve government committed to serving every person with equal dignity and respect. We must blame both parties of our legislators for any law that ever gets passed or lacks enforcement. When we see lack of enforcement of our laws so that corrupt things are happening, we must give accountability to our legislators. People focus way too much on the president. Anywho's, there's that one. Defending women from gender ideology, extremism, and restoring biological truth to the federal Denying the biological reality of sex have increasingly used legal and other socially coercive means to permit men to self-identify as women and gain access to intimate, single-sex spaces and activities designed for women, from women's domestic abuse shelters to women's workplace showers. This is wrong, and I agree with that. Efforts to eradicate the biological reality of sex fundamentally attack women by depriving them of their dignity, safety, and well-being. The erasure of sex in language and policy has corrosive impact not just on women, but on the validity of the entire American system. I do think this is in court, in federal court. Basing federal policy on truth is critical to scientific inquiry, so people need to pay attention to what's happening into our United States Supreme Court cases and federal courts on these particular type of issues, because no matter what a president does, or even what legislators do, much of that will be decided in the courts. The unhealthy road is paved by an ongoing and purposeful attack against the ordinary and long-standing use. See, the legislators can pass laws and decide what's constitutional and what's not, and the president can sign things into law, but it's the courts who ultimately decide what is constitutional or not, and they can overthrow the laws. That's the balance, check and balance system. Accordingly, my administration will defend women's rights and protect freedom of conscience by using clear and accurate language and policies that recognize women as biologically female and men are biologically male. These sexes are not changeable and are grounded in fundamental and incontrovertible reality. Under my direction, the executive branch branch will enforce all sex protective laws to promote this reality, and the following definitions shall govern all executive interpretation for application of federal law. Sex shall refer to an individual's immutable biological classification as either male or female. Sex is not a synonym and does not include the concept of gender identity. Women are women and girls or girls shall mean adult and juvenile human females respectively. Men or man, and boys or boys shall mean adult and juvenile human males respectively. Female means a person belonging at conception to the sex that produces the large reproductive cell. Male means a person belonging at conception to the sex that produces small reproductive cell. Now, in respect, there are some people who are born with two parts, and so I think that they will, be able to choose one over the other. They have a specific medical term for that, but what he's referring to is just people who just want to, I think they call it gender dysphoria, but then there are a lot of people who actually abuse that and do it for horrible reasons. Anyways, yeah, that happens, and so he's putting a stop to that. Gender identity reflects a fully internal and subjective sense of self, disconnected from biological reality, and sex and existing on infinite continuum that does not provide a meaningful basis for identification cannot be recognized as a replacement for sex. Recognizing women are biologically distinct from men. Here we go. Within 30 days, the Secretary of Health and Human Services shall provide to the U.S. government external partners public clear guidance expanding on the sex-based definitions set forth in this order. Promote or otherwise indicate gender ideology shall cease issuing such statements, policies, regulations, forms, communications, or other messages. Agency forms that require an individual's sex shall list male or female and shall not request gender identity. Agencies shall take all necessary steps as permitted by law to end the federal funding of gender ideology. The prior administration argued the Supreme Court's decision in Boxlock v. Clayton County 2020, which addressed Title VII of the Civil Rights Act 1964, requires gender identity-based access to single-sex spaces under, for example, Title IX of the Educational Amendments Act. The position is legally untenable and has harmed women. Attorney General shall therefore immediately issue guidance to agencies to correct the misapplication of the Supreme Court's decision. Misapplication, not overriding the Supreme Court's decision, but misapplication of that decision. Federal funds shall not be used to promote gender ideology, privacy, intimate spaces. From what I read, yeah, they're going to be taking people out of prisons and putting them in their biological sex places. No federal funds are expanded by medical procedure, treatment, or drug for the purpose of conforming an inmate's appearance to that of the opposite sex. And they shall not be taking VA funds on veterans who are suffering and waiting for care and spending money on treatment for that. Protecting rights, single-sex spaces, bill text. This is going to be argued in federal court. So pay attention to what's happening in the federal court on these issues, because they're the ones that will decide this. Please understand that. Again, not signed by his name, just the White House. Establishing and implementing the President's Department of Government Efficiency. This is the biggest problem right here. You cannot create, a president does not have any power of creating an actual department. They cannot be paid by the government. They cannot just bypass Congress. Only legislators create presidents or departments. That's it. They cannot be considered an actual department of any. The Department of Government Efficiency establishes, this executive order establishes the Department of Government Efficiency to implement the president's DOGE agenda by modernizing federal technology and software to maximize government efficiency. And do know that everything that they attempt to do under this right here will be up to the legislators, and they have pretty much shot down everything they've attempted to do thus far. Just know that. It's all pretty much show, in my opinion. But this is already in federal court because there was lawsuits filed. I don't know if they're dive cases, because sometimes they'll file lawsuits pretending to attack something, when in reality they'll file in a way that it's set up to lose, and in that way things become law. So we'll just have to keep an eye on what happens in the Supreme Court, because there are shenanigans that goes on through the Supreme Court. So, but I think that the legitimate ones that are actually opponents to this are actually fighting. But I haven't looked at those lawsuits yet specifically. Anywho's, DOJ structure, reorganization, and renaming of the United States Digital Service. Again, all this will be fought in court. DOJ service, temporary organization, shall be headed by the USDS administrator. You cannot direct any federal agency or any money from federal agencies to go to a private organization, which is what US DOJ service is. But anyways, he's trying though. He's trying. And that'll all be argued in federal court. Again. Okay. Again, not signed by Trump, just the White House. Also not signed in the year of our Lord. Obama, when he first started, he did use in the year of our Lord, but then kind of dropped that throughout his presidency. America First Policy Directive to the Secretary of State. From this day forward, the foreign policy of the United States shall champion core American interests and always put America and American citizens first. Okay. On to the next one. Protect the United States from foreign terrorists and other national security and public safety threats. That's pretty vague. Protect its citizens from aliens who intend to commit terror. We have federal statutes. We have federal statutes that do exactly all this. These orders are just a bunch of show. They don't even need these. The federal statutes are what the agencies must and are required by law to govern when they deal with anything criminal within our land. So, but, presidents do this. So, it's policy of the U.S. to protect its citizens from aliens who intend to commit terrorist attacks, threaten our national security, espouse hateful ideology, or otherwise exploit the immigration laws for malevolent purposes. Which is why you notice in these orders they're quoting statutes that already exist. U.S. Code 1101. These are laws that cover the exact things that these are discussing. They're just, it's just kind of like a directive to, enforce the law, kind of, basically. Vetting and screening across agencies. Secretary of State in coordination with Attorney General, Secretary of Homeland Security, Director of National Intelligence shall promptly identify all resources that may be used to ensure that all aliens seeking admission to the United States or who are already in the U.S. are vetted and screened to the maximum degree possible. Well, yeah, that's something that is under our current law that wasn't being doing. This should have been done. But you know what? Here's the thing about that. Our legislators had the duty to take that to court, that law wasn't being enforced, because that was a violation of law, and violation of the law, the oath, when a president takes an oath to uphold the Constitution and all of our laws, and when they don't follow the laws, okay, and the federal agencies don't follow the law, it's our legislators who have to take that to court. So we have to blame both parties of our legislators for any of this stuff that's been happening in our nation, and people do not give enough credit to the fact that the accountability does fall on legislators when laws are not enforced. Unleashing Alaska's extraordinary resource potential. By the authority vested in me as president and the laws of the United States, the state of Alaska, talking about their energy, mineral, timber, and seafood, immediate end to the assault on Alaska's sovereignty and its ability to responsibly develop these resources for the benefit of the nation. Immediately reverse the punitive restrictions implemented by previous administration, specifically target resource development on both state and federal lands in Alaska. Expedite permitting and leasing of energy and natural resource projects in Alaska. Specific agency actions. Heads of all executive departments and agencies, including but not limited to Secretary of Interior, Secretary of Commerce, acting under the Secretary of Commerce for Oceans, Atmosphere, Secretary of the Army, acting through the Assistant Secretary of the Army for Public Works. I'm not sure that Secretary of the Army, this is their criteria. Anywho's, there's that one, all about Alaska. Public land order signed in 2021. Revoking those that were restricting progression in Alaska, basically. Signed by the White House, not President Trump. Interesting. Protecting the American people against invasion. Calling it invasion. When, over the last 4 years, the prior administration invited, administered, oversaw an unprecedented flood of illegal immigration to the United States. Illegal meaning they avoided ports of entry. The specific thing about the people coming, there's a specific cap on how many people can come in and apply for refugee status that pretty much every country in the world has. And our country is, the caps on how many can come in each year is established by Congress, by the legislators, and under specific law that the president must follow. He violated that law, and the legislators violated their duty to take him to court over that. So I blame the legislators as much as I blame the past administration on the overwhelming bringing them in violation of current federal law. And the ones that did not come in through ports of entry was illegal, okay? But if they came in here and they filed for refugee status, they were doing what they believed was allowed. But this is specifically talking about people who don't come in legally. They don't use the ports of entry. Why wouldn't they use the ports of entry? That's a problem. Over the last 4 years, Prime Administration invited and saw an unprecedented flood of illegal immigration in the United States. Millions of illegal aliens crossed our borders or were allowed to fly directly into the United States on commercial flights and allowed to settle in American communities in violation of long-standing federal laws. The laws that I told you about with their specific caps, yearly caps. Many of these aliens unlawfully within the United States present significant threats. Now, those are the ones they're supposed to be going after. I don't think they're going to be just going and rounding up people. There's no capability currently for them to take that many people out of the country. But they are going to go after the ones who came here. And I think the ones that didn't come in here through ports of entry, so they won't have the paperwork for doing that. And then basically the ones who are on criminal watch lists, that kind of thing. Others are engaged in hostile activities, including espionage, economic espionage, and preparations for terror-related activities. Many have abused the generosity of American people, and their presence in the United States has cost taxpayer billions of dollars at the federal, state, and local levels. Enforcing our nation's immigration laws is critically important. Again, legislators. It's their duty if something involving immigration is not being followed, and they did not do their duty, so I don't blame just any administration for that. It's the legislators. Anywho's, moving right along. Executive Order 13993 of January 2021, revision of civil immigration enforcement policies and priorities. They're revoking all that. And I think he's ending the birthright citizenship. They came here illegally, had a baby. There's not going to be birthright for that child born. I think that is also in federal court that's being argued. I think that's been argued in court for quite some time, but it has a different angle of argument each time they present it in court, so it kind of stays in court, but that one is definitely in court. Detention facilities, take appropriate action, allocate all legally available resources, or establish contracts to construct, operate, control these facilities to detain removable aliens. So there's going to be a lot of, argument about the detention of that, so you'll see that, and that's happened in the past. So, recalcitrant countries, the Secretary of State and Secretary of Homeland shall take all appropriate action to cooperate, effectively implement appropriate sanctions provided by Section 243, eliminating all documentary barriers, dilatory tactics, or the restrictions that prevent the prompt repatriation of aliens to any foreign state. I have done a video before talking about the only way you can deport somebody by law, the country they came from must receive them before they can get deportation, before they can be deported. So if for any reason, by the way, a country does not receive them or refuses to receive them, they can be deported, which will be horrible for them because it means they will be detained endlessly until the country does accept them. I don't know if people are aware of that, but that is fact. Reestablishment of the voice office in addressing victims of crimes committed by removable aliens. Ensuring parole authority under case by case in accordance with the plain language of the statute. Temporary protected status. Ensuring that designations of temporary protected status are consistent with the provisions of the law 8 U.S.C. 12548. And they are appropriately limited in scope and made for only so long as may be necessary to fulfill the textual requirements of that statute. And, implementing a law is completely appropriate, but the legislator should have already done that. Just saying. That's their job, to enforce the law. When president is not going by the laws, they should have already had them in. But anyways, both parties are guilty for that. And that concludes the executive orders here. There are more, but yeah, this would be quite a long. But I think that they just rushed through and had him sign stuff real quick, like didn't even really discuss. I mean, some of them that he signed, they weren't even saying. And when they first started signing them, they were saying what each one was. But then he just started rambling on and started talking about stuff, and they weren't even talking about what was being signed. And people were starting to get mad in the chat and the live stream I was watching. So here you go, guys, and I'll put the links in the description. Hope you have a blessed day. Bye.